real original. Yeah, this is real original. Real original. Sign, seal, real original.
Welcome to the Real Original Podcast.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
I'm your host, Michael Sutton, as you may or may not know.
Real
Original.
Original.
Yeah, so
real because we talk about real estate, and real play on words are just it's more original
it's not
than others.
Really it is. I mean, it's hard to not have real estate come up or have this, be a channel where people who want to transact real estate or whatever, that's talked about. But really, the idea behind the Real Original Podcast is one, I like to have fun. So it's a little tongue in cheek. Like people are like, oh, you're doing a podcast? That's real original.
Yeah.
So it's a little tongue in cheek.
I like it.
And also, what I really wanted to do is highlight people who are real as in authentic and who are doing original things or who I see as original. And the kind of the connection there too is you don't have to look like some way or be some way, but you being authentic makes you very original because there's only one of you.
True.
So that's really the thought behind it. And so that's a great segue into my guest today is my good buddy, Arlo Nugent. Arlo, thank you for being here.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. You asked me to come do this, and I'm like, yeah, it'd be awesome, because this is what we do anyways. We get together, we talk, it's over food, it's over coffee, and now we're just doing it here for other people to see. Yeah. Maybe it's interesting, maybe they like it, maybe they don't, we'll see.
And that's the thing, there might not be that many people that see or watch this, but we'll see. Actually, probably, because, I'm just this little old real estate agent, who enjoys, sharing things and connecting with people and sharing my lessons. But you also have, beyond your real estate business, which is really successful and cool to see, and I've been around for a long time, you've got Arlo's Exotics, and your whole side is a car guy.
I love cars. I've always loved cars since before I can remember. My mom would tell me. So when I was 4 years old in Germany, and she would take me to a pre-kindergarten type thing, she said I would point out Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, and call them out by name. I don't even remember doing that.
That's pretty cool.
But I've just always been a car guy. It's just always been my thing.
So when you say you were a kid in Germany, are you German?
I am. Half biologically, half German. Was born in Germany.
Who's German, mom or dad?
My mom.
Mom's German, dad American.
Yep, American. Yeah.
Armed Forces?
Texas. Yeah, Armed Forces.
Yeah, there you go.
Texas,
Air Force?
which, he was in the Air Force. Okay. Yeah, he was in the Air Force.
See, I got some military friends.
Army too.
Okay.
Yep. So he did both.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But what was that like?
My family moved here when I was 5 or 6 in '89. So I guess I would have been a little bit older than that, 6, 7, something like that. It was interesting because I went to school not knowing English in kindergarten. Imagine at that age being put into a room and you don't understand geographic boundaries, languages, cultures. You don't understand all of that. So I was put in kindergarten in East Tennessee, out of all places. Not a lot of foreigners there at the time. And kids that look like me are, they're talking, but I don't understand anything. So it was interesting. I learned English really quickly because that's how you learn languages, is through immersion. And the younger you are, the easier it is to pick up. Imagine learning Korean for you now out of a textbook.
That would be pretty tough, but it's my understanding you speak Korean as well.
Well, that's why I'm using Korean specifically. But imagine sitting here and you would look at it and you'd be like, I could never understand that.
Oh yeah,
I could never read that. But the reality is it's actually quite simple. It's a scientific language. So their alphabet pretty much lines up with ours, with the English alphabet, and it's truly phonetic. So think about the word cell phone. Not phonetic at all.
No.
Try to explain.
You've said that before because you pulled that out real quick, and I was thinking about that cell phone. That's not phonetic at all.
Try to explain to somebody learning English, an adult, why cell phone, why it's C then and not an S, why the PH instead of F, and it just sometimes is that way. It just is. Well, Korean is not like that. Korean is phonetically accurate always.
Spanish is kind of like that.
I don't know enough about it. I believe you. I know you do.
It's pretty much typically phonetic, and I think that's one thing about English. I mean, And the other thing too is even people who are native English speakers here in America barely can get there, and there, right? So it's like,
yeah, they can't get it right here, and they're native. But I was put into basically like a rice village is maybe a little bit extreme, but I wasn't in a major city. I had to learn Korean out of necessity. So it's not like a lot of European countries where you hop in a taxi, imagine in Paris or even smaller cities, they speak English. Where I would hop in and they stare at me for a little bit. And then I'm like trying to show them, like, and I don't know what I'm looking at on the map. I don't know where to go. Shine, I think that's how you say downtown, Shine. And they look at me and they finally understand. You can't even say left or right. Like, so anyways, I learned quickly out of necessity and full immersion. Full immersion when you're there, like I would just sit on the floor, had these Korean books, and I would just sit there and just study and study and study. So yeah, when I first moved here and I went to like the Convoy area, and I would go buy some Korean
Convoy,
food.
for any listeners that aren't from San Diego, is the best street in San Diego with the best Asian food restaurants on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'd walk in and like, you know, maybe I remember I was at a grocery store and some lady said something about me, and I just started talking to them and their faces turned all red. And I was like, yeah, whipped out a little bit of Korean, didn't expect that.
Love that. That's like I feel like American who doesn't speak more than English, that's like their fantasy, but they never actually get to do it.
So my brother, he speaks a bunch of languages, like a bunch. Japanese, he's completely fluent. So when he was here in San Diego, I went to pick him up in Point Loma, and he gets in my car and he's just laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? And he was like, I was in the elevator with these two Japanese chicks, and one of them said to her friend, like, wow, that blonde guy, he's pretty hot. So I said to her directly, like, oh, thank you so much. You want to go out on a date? And he said that they like just kind of were staring like this. They didn't even like look at him. And the one said to the other, oh my gosh, I feel like he just said something in Japanese. And my brother's like, yeah, I'm speaking Japanese to you. And they just kind of stared at him like he was some like mythical person. Because he's like taller than I am, blonde, blue hairs, or blonde and, I'm saying that backwards, blue eyes, blonde, surfer guy. And literally on his way to go surfing, like legitimately looks like a surfer and was going to surf. And then these Japanese girls are just blown away. So
yeah, I only had one experience like that. I went into a place one time and these two like Latino women were speaking in Spanish, and they're like, oh, he's handsome. I wonder how tall he is. Like, I wonder if he has a girlfriend. And I like turned to him in Spanish because that was the time I was living part in Mexico and part here, and just told them I'm 6'6", and yeah, I have a girlfriend, but in Spanish. And they were cracking
That's
up
awesome.
And they thought it was so funny. But dude, you know, one thing that you said, and you were talking about going to Korea
yeah,
and being in a total immersion program where you like need to learn the language from necessity. You don't speak the language, and then you're just like studying out of your book. That, for anyone listening, is kind of like how that's like a really kind of like an insight into kind of like how I see Arlo and kind of what makes him so unique and what I want to talk to him about today. And everyone who comes on my podcast, I give them a book, or if I go on a podcast. And the one that I brought for you is Discipline is Destiny
Cool.
by
Thank
Ryan
you.
Holiday. So you can keep that, you can read it,
Okay.
or you can give it away. But you are one of the people I know that is the most disciplined. Like when we go out to eat and you're on
I
your
knew this
thing,
was gonna come up.
anyone
I knew this
anyone
was
who
gonna
can
come
see
up.
the video, like Arlo's jacked. Was it your 40th birthday this year?
my 41st
41st birthday, he got absolutely jacked and shredded.
Yeah.
And just was on like a crazy diet. And if we go out to eat, you know, business dinner or something, he's like,
am I ordering?
Can I have like 6 chicken breasts, like no oil,
seasoning,
like no
nothing.
seasoning,
Nope,
nothing.
that's it, in a bowl.
Yeah.
And
or
they
like,
just look at
I
me.
think the only other thing I've seen you order is egg whites. And you like go and hike these mountains and you do things with your body and you get these cars. Like we kind of touched on, you're a car guy, and we'll get to those cars later.
Yeah.
But you have this incredible capacity for being intentional, like setting goals and then like implementing strategies and then staying disciplined enough and gritty enough to reach and achieve those goals and keep pushing. And I know for me, it's been a big inspiration to watch you over the years continually like climb, you know, metaphorical mountains and reaching these goals and new heights, but also literal mountains. Like I see you like
I
hiking
appreciate
mountains
that.
and getting
all that means a lot.
Yeah. So-
I enjoyed. I don't know which one of those I could say I enjoy more. But the mountain hiking, I guess, is, and it's funny because like in the circle, if you refer to it as a hike, people kind of like tense up a little bit. Because these are like expeditions. This is like people dying and
Sorry, guys,
helicopters coming in with baskets, pulling bodies out and stuff. Like,
yeah, this isn't Cowles Mountain and
this is like traveling to other time zones and just getting out in places where it's just wild places in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So like one of the things too. So like on this show, what I'm hoping to do for anyone listening is, and I talked about like for me, like my journey was, in a nutshell, was like, I said this on the previous episode, like I'm not doing this because I am Mr. Authentic and was this way. Like I really wasn't. And then I learned that that wasn't the way, and I got tired, and by no virtue of my own, started living this way. I was just tired of kind of living this life where I didn't know who I was. I was doing stuff with people I didn't really like. And I just got sick of it, right? And so I had to go inward and look inside and make changes and find out who I was. And then I found out like there was part of my personality and things about me that like really fucking sucked that I didn't like, and had to change those things about myself. And then by like finding out who I was, changing the things I didn't like, replacing them with things that I did like and could and behaviors and traits I could admire, and living authentically, like I became like way more fulfilled. My business literally doubled and continued to grow.
How old were you when you had that realization of there are parts within me that are shitty and I want to improve and I want to address those? How old do you, like, was that a distinct, like, day? Like,
No.
if you had to pin it down, was it over time?
I think there was a few times. Like the first time I remember, I was kind of just like a knucklehead troublemaker. I was doing a lot of bad stuff, and I was probably about 21, 22, something like that. And I remember looking on Facebook, and I was seeing all my friends graduating college and going off and traveling and like teaching English in foreign countries. They're doing whatever. And I remember sitting there in my bedroom of my parents' house, like a total loser, broke, no job, and just being like, wow, like I thought that was going to be my life, like what they're living.
Yeah.
And it's not like these guys are smarter or more talented than me. I felt like a lot of them, I was smarter and more talented than them. And not to sound like a dick, right?
So you were like early 20s?
Yeah, early 20s is when it first started. And then so I kind of like got my stuff together, spent some time like in Mexico, which I really enjoyed and felt like ignited with passion for the first time, and really had a really unique experience. And then later on, probably about 27, 28, I felt like the only way I could really kind of explain it was I felt like a void, or like a hole that I could tell was like a spiritual thing. And I tried going to like different churches with some of my friends who are, like really into like work in Christian ministry and stuff like that. And they were really kind and like brought me to church and talked to me about stuff. And I just never really like felt like I fit in. And then I got introduced to some great books, some great people, and then some other spiritual teachers and stuff. And I found my own like relationship with a God of my understanding, and groups and fellowships and stuff like that really work for me. But really, like when I think things started to turn in a really positive way was probably, about like 28, 29. And then 30 is when I doubled my business because I decided I was going to live authentically.
How old are you now?
I'm 35. So what I wanted to talk about, it's just a little background on me, but what I wanted to talk about with you, because as long as I've known you, I've watched you grow and your business grow. But what I wanted to talk about is like you were a kid and you were picking out cars. So there's something in you that loves cars. But have you always been disciplined? And have you always, the other thing about you that I want to say real quick for anyone that doesn't know Arlo that's listening is beyond being disciplined and being someone who sets big goals and achieves them, and actually goals that take a lot of grit and discipline. One thing about Arlo, and why I wanted him to come on, is Arlo does not give a fuck. He is always Arlo. He is not shy to like crack a joke, speak his mind, be himself, and just doesn't really need to try to be someone other than he is. And so what I wanted to see is like, have you always been like that, or what were you like before?
Okay, so there were two questions in there that are top of mind that really stood out. So the first part was, have I always been disciplined? And then the second part was, have I been like the authentic person I am now who doesn't care what other people think, says whatever's on my mind?
Let's start with
right?
the second part, if you're good with that.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with it.
Because I think the discipline kind of like goes probably off of that, right? Because I think first you had to be maybe like, to reach those kind of goals, don't you really need to have purposeful goals that mean something to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the discipline part, well, I'll answer your question in the order that you want the second one first. I've kind of just never really given that much of a fuck. Like, I've pretty much always been pretty authentic who I am, and some people like me, some people don't, and I don't really care. It just is what it is. It's funny because it works better for you, like when people perceive you as being successful and they see things you're doing or driving or whatever. And that's the funny part, is because it's like, I've kind of always been an asshole, but now people are like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, but before, it wasn't perceived as like being that cool. It's like, hey, he's just kind of an asshole. He's like,
isn't that funny? Like, you become successful and the traits people didn't like about you, they're like, oh yeah, that makes you cool
he's
now.
different because of that.
Yeah.
Like, no, I've kind of always just been like that. But there is another part of that where I think the older I get and the more life experience I have, the less I care.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because my wife, like, she'll say something like, that's so immature, or you're this, you're 41 years old, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, it's just going to get worse. The older I get, it's just going to get worse because I care less. Because
is that what she said about the only van sticker? Is that what it was?
She just knows I don't even know if I probably just put that on there and never even said anything. And then she probably laughed about it. Like, she just knows how I am, and nothing surprises her. I mean, it's like, it'd be so funny if she was sitting here too. I've bought so many cars. Like, and I just.
What are some of the cars for people listening that you've had? Like, list all your favorite cars you've had.
Oh, geez. Favorite, I've had a couple of R8s. I like those.
So Audi R8.
Yeah, I like those. I like V10s a lot. I have a Lamborghini V10 now, custom built one this year. Well, 2023. It's 2024 now, but limited run of those. AMG
Yeah, that thing's
GT.
badass. You could see it on his Instagram, Arlo's Exotics, if you're curious.
Yeah.
Sick car.
It's funny, but I was saying, like, I just kind of buy, like, she totally trusts me. I just buy stuff. I've bought houses we've lived in. I've bought a number of cars. Like, and this is the way I do it. Here's a little hack for when you get married. So I remember we were walking our dog, and I'm like, hey, so what do you think about the AMG GT? Are you familiar with that car? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I don't know. But anyways.
Are you asking me, or are you
I'm asking
saying
you? It looks like a hippo head.
That's the Mercedes, yeah?
Yeah. So it's a supercar. It's a very high-end Mercedes. You don't see many of them at all. And when you see one, you're like, wow, what is that? Because it's so wide, and the way it looks, like twin-turbo V8, it's just an absolute monster. So we're walking, and I'm like, hey, so what do you think about the AMG GT? She's like, oh, they're ugly. And in my head, I'm like, shit, I just bought one this morning.
I love that.
But
so what happened? What did you do?
So I come home, and this is like in my head, it's funny because like all these different memories are coming through because I've done this with so many cars. And she was out washing another one of our cars, actually, and I pull in, and like she can hear like 2 blocks away. She's like looking because, man, this thing was badass. And then like she doesn't realize it's me, and then like I turn in the driveway, and she's like, okay. Yeah. Another one.
So wait, just to be clear, are you telling people, don't worry, just ask your wife, be like, yeah, do you like this supercar? And regardless of what she says, just show up, it'll be fine.
There's a strategy there. It's kind of like, okay, so I come home with like a really expensive rifle, for example. I used to be competitive long-range marksman and into all these things. Well, those rifles are super expensive, like 15, 20 grand, like the optics another 5 grand. Those things are very, very expensive. So I bring home a new rifle, and always the first question, how much was that? And you got to double or triple it. All right, and you got to let that sit. It's 45. What the fuck, 45 grand? No, I'm just kidding, it's 20. Oh, okay. But if you start with 20, they get pissed about that. Do you see the strategy?
I do see the strategy.
I'm not giving marriage advice.
This isn't good marriage advice, but I will say you can see why Arlo is great at helping people buy, sell, and transact real estate.
I mean, it's just psychology, right?
Psychology,
There's a strategy.
sales, baby.
So I think I answered that question. Like, I've kind of never really given a shit.
Well,
I got in a lot of trouble in elementary school.
Tell us about that.
Oh, I can't even see. That's the thing. When we were kids and when we were in high school, none of this existed. Stuff wasn't documented. Like, imagine if the shit that we did, I didn't know you then, but imagine if, like, the stuff we did in high school was documented.
I think about that because all we had is, like, at best, like, maybe someone had one of those little, little cameras where you twist the thing and you take it to, like, Rite Aid and they develop the 5x8s.
And then it was a big deal when it was an hour waiting time to get your photos back.
Oh,
but anyways, I was just a shithead. Like, I just didn't care. I just kind of said whatever was on my mind. And
so just like now.
Exactly. And teachers, which was your question, and teachers just didn't like me because I was very outspoken. I went to, for the dumbest reason, I don't know why, not the dumbest reason, I shouldn't say that, but I found myself in a liberal arts college. Me, in a liberal arts school.
Which, by the way, why that's so funny is not only is Arlo a gun enthusiast.
Yep.
Yeah, just you were a police officer, sheriff?
Yeah, I worked with the San Diego Sheriff's Department for many years, several years.
And it just doesn't really. I mean, I never pictured you at a liberal arts college.
I didn't even know what it meant, honestly. I'm just kind of like, oh, this is it's a private school. It's an expensive school.
What school is it?
Maryville College. So
where's that?
East Tennessee. So that's the thing, nobody's heard of it, but there are 2 undergrad schools in the country that require senior comps and a senior thesis to graduate. Maryville College and Harvard. Nobody's heard of Maryville College, and they cost about the same. Almost.
So you put that in the sentence because you put Harvard and Maryville College in the same, so people are like, oh, it's like Harvard. That's good. That's like the strategy you used with your wife in the cars?
Yeah, kind of, I guess, but it's like nobody's heard of it, right? But it's a very challenging school, and I thought, oh, this is a really hard school, this, that, the other. I didn't really understand what a liberal arts education meant. Like, I didn't realize I'd have to take, like, all these bullshit history of music, all these classes. I'm like, I don't care. I want to know about business. And I just remember, like, this one professor getting so mad at me because he was talking about George Soros and he was talking about, like, how capitalism is bad. And he was saying all these things. I'm like, hold on. I don't agree with you. That doesn't make sense. No, look at this. And he hated having a student that was pushing back on him. And I didn't know, like, really what I was talking about, but I knew that I didn't agree with what he was saying. And I wasn't the guy that just kind of sat there and was just kind of like, okay.
Well, I feel like university used to be for that, right? For
it's
that kind of
supposed to be for
like
critical
discussion,
thinking,
critical thinking, some debate, right?
But the liberal agenda, right? They don't want that. They don't want you to disagree with them. Their ideology, theirs is right, and if you disagree in any way, then you're a bad person. And I learned that very much so. Well, but that doesn't make sense. What do you mean it doesn't make sense? It just doesn't make sense to me. Can we talk about it? And then it's just emotion. It's emotion driven. I'm more like factual, black and white. I'm like, no, but that's never worked in history. Like, tell me one government where, like, that type of, like, structures worked. Huh.
You're referring to, like, communism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then coincidentally, communism, it was kind of illegal, but it was we used a loophole in January of 2001 to go to Cuba.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What was Cuba like?
Cuba, it was awesome then. It was awesome. It was authentic. It's not how I'd want to live, but it's like, hey, we're looking at a country. We saw the rations. We saw that Fidel Castro speak, the whole thing. Or the Fidel Castro Square. I don't think he didn't speak there. But that's where they did the monthly rations. Doctors were making $30 a month, and, like, they have very little. Like, they get their rations of soap and toothpaste and all of this. And I happened to be on that trip because the loophole was before Bush closed it. It was for educational purposes. We could technically go. We were there for 2 weeks, and we walked through the University of Havana and, like, looked in a couple of classrooms for, like, an hour and stayed for 2 weeks. But coincidentally, he was one of the professors that was, like, the chaperone or whatever. And I was like, do you not, like, see how this is not a good thing for us? Cuba was amazing, though. Cuba was really cool. It was unspoiled. It was kind of like going in a time machine.
I have heard that from other people.
Yeah, I don't want to go back now because the memory I have of Cuba then is so pure. So we took a plane from Miami down. Miami, Starbucks, McDonald's, Mercedes, the lights, just everything. It's Miami, right? Everything in your face. Less than a 30-minute flight, you're flying into Havana, the capital. And it's like, oh, that person has their lights on. Oh, there's a car. And the airport was like this little rinky-dink, like, I don't even know how to describe it, like a little canopy almost. And it was so cool. Like, you didn't see billboards, you didn't see all the advertisements, you didn't see all of that.
Yeah.
It was super authentic. So I don't want to go back because, like, those memories are so good. And I've known people who've gone recently, and they, like, have all sorts of bad stuff to say about it, you know, because now, like, the cruise ships come in, it's been commercialized and all of those things.
So it's kind of
all
like
the tourism
halfway going into the future, halfway in the past.
Yeah, because it's like fake authenticity. So it's not authentic, right? Because they're like catering now to this whole tourist stuff. And they had it technically before. Canadians, a lot of Germans would go there. But as soon as it got opened up to the U.S., I mean, I imagine that it just kind of exploded.
Yeah, I've never been. I've only talked to a couple of people that went. Because, like, when I was in Mexico, like, people from Mexico can go. It's not like in the U.S. Yeah. So I had some friends from Mexico that went to visit, and they loved it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, going back to you and kind of your thing, like, you said you've always been you, right? Like, authentically, Arlo, like, say what comes to mind, do all this, kind of basically as when you were a kid, you're the same guy now. Has there been, because I'm hoping that, like, anybody listening, right, because there's different kinds of people, right? Some people are, like, in that stage where they're like, man, I know I'm not being authentic, or I know something doesn't feel right. Maybe this is it. And, like, I want to start going inward and right, and then make a change. Or some people might be like, yeah, I'm authentic, but I'm authentically, like, unhappy in this job and I want to go start a business. Or some people might be living authentically, but as you know, like, hitting goals are challenging. And so this can be something for them to listen to, like, along the way, like, you know, just great content. Because I don't know about you, I love having positive content or good audiobooks and stuff to listen to when I'm in that mode, right?
Just got to surround yourself by the right people.
Exactly.
Because, like, that's the funny thing for me is some people will be like, oh, you did this, you did that. That's crazy, man. I can't believe you did that. And in my head, I'm like, that's nothing. Like, there's so much more.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. So, like, some people, like, might hear you, right? Like me, that I felt like that doesn't come naturally. Has there been, like, a dark side to it, or is it a double-edged sword, or, like, where there's things, or is it kind of one of those things that's like, yeah, some people aren't going to like it, but overall it's a good thing? Like, because I'm sure some people are like, well, yeah, it's easy for him to say that's how he is, but how would you encourage someone, or, like, what would you say to people who aren't that way but maybe want to be that way?
Are you talking about ambition, discipline, or which?
No,
part,
just like just being authentic and not caring what people think. I think so many people, like, really don't want to have to, like, care about what people think, and I think a lot of people live these lives, and I know I've been there, where it's like we're either thinking about ourselves or we're thinking about what you are thinking about me, right?
Right.
So still,
I'd say you're in the wrong room. You're associating with the wrong people, like, because your true friends are people who really like you for you. Well, so that's challenging, because if you don't ever act like the real you, you can't expect people to like you for you if they don't actually know you.
Yeah, and that
seems like
happened.
A lot of work to me. Seems like a lot of work, like, to put on a whole
charade. It is really a lot of work, and I think the thing too is, like, anyone who's maybe, like, feels like they're in the wrong room, and you're exactly right. Like, that's where I was, right? And what I realized looking back is I was afraid, I think, of being alone, because, like, I knew I wasn't the person I wanted to be, and I had to be alone with my thoughts. So it's easier to be around people, to not have to be alone, right? And have that connection and kind of be with other people who are not doing much. Or I didn't have to really, like, explore, become better, do the hard work. And so I think, like, if you feel like you're in the wrong room, you've got to go be alone for a bit, and it's okay. Because I know that, like, when I was going through a transformation and kind of change, is like, it was lonely, but I needed that time to, like, go back kind of into that cocoon, so to speak, and have that, so I could have that metamorphosis. Yeah. But also that I didn't realize, like, I was always talking about, like, wanting to have, like, different kinds of people in my life, and I didn't realize until I started spending time alone that those people were constantly inviting me to things, but I was too busy with other groups.
So it's an interesting thing. It's like wrong room. I say it as if it's so black and white, and it's not, right? Because like before you took time
But
to
it
yourself,
is at the same time.
not really, because that means different things to different people. Like for
Sure.
you, before you took time to yourself, if we're talking and I'm like asking you right room, wrong room, you haven't had the time to reflect and really that you don't know what that means to you. You've just been in this room. So I feel like you kind of have to have that time and realize what the right room for you is. The right room
sure.
for me is not the right room for other people, and other people feel that they're in the right room and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
For sure.
it's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for you too, like, you know, on your, I mean, do you ever feel like being you has like cost you opportunities, or has it only really benefit you? And do you feel like if it has cost you opportunities, do the opportunities you gain from being authentic outweigh it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's an opportunity cost with being authentic, and you don't always know what it is because people are chicken shit to call you out on it. So there are people out there, I'm sure, I don't know their names and they don't like me. Does that keep me from sleeping at night? I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I don't know. There are people who literally don't like me who've never met me.
You know what I found out too? People like in I'll use real estate because it's like we both do real estate, and real estate's a great example of a business where your network like really like shapes, or like you do business with your network.
Right.
And what I realized is like if people really don't like you or they kind of like you, both of those people that I don't like you at all and like I kind of like you, or like you're okay, like yeah, you're an acquaintance associate, like yeah, he's cool, I see him 4 times a year. Neither of those people is going to do business with you.
No.
The only people who do business with you and that refer you business are people who really like you.
Right.
So it's like, and not that business is everything, I'm not saying go be an asshole to everybody, but it's like, who fucking cares? Like, it's so much like living authentically, and like part of why I did this podcast is like I want to do a podcast. Like I really I love having a creative outlet. I love talking to interesting people, and I love to give interesting people a chance to like have something to put out, right?
Yeah.
And get to
Yeah,
tell
for
their
sure.
story, you know?
So there were a lot of parts to that question. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm sure it's cost me things. I'm sure. So with social media, right? Like I try my best not to troll. I've gotten better.
By the way, our relationship is basically built off us trolling each other on social media,
Because
which I love.
That's a real friend. A real friend,
Agreed.
like you can joke with them, you can say things. I'm not going to offend you. You're not
No.
going to offend me. But we're going to have fun banter back and forth. But the problem with doing it on social media is that it's public.
Yeah.
And I used to not realize just how many people would see stuff. So like something would pop up. This is funny, talking about being authentic. Something popped up on Bravo, $1 million listing or something. And it was one of the stars, and she had like a bunch of nose jobs. And I made a comment on there about like, oh, bad nose job, or there's something about a nose job. And I don't know why I did. Like, I don't know why I cared so much. My brother, who was in some country, I don't even know where he was at the time, but he wasn't in the U.S. because he's always kind of in different countries. We never really know where he is. Replied to my comment, "You're one to speak. You don't have your own nose either."
I love that.
Because I got my nose done.
I
And
do
don't
know
give a
that. I
fuck.
remember because
Yeah.
what did your old assistant? Was it your assistant
So
say to you?
here's the thing about that. Let's talk about this for a minute. So my nose has been broken so many times. I used to have a fucking beak.
I was gonna say that's why, because it was broken, right? You had the
Many
deviated
times.
septum, not that it was
I
not the nose
absolutely
you wanted.
did. No, I absolutely did have a deviated septum. So longer story there, but when I was getting that corrected, I asked him, I was like, hey, so, he could feel like where my nose had been split open. I did Taekwondo competitively.
Yeah.
Got my black belt in
didn't
Seoul
know
at
you
the
were a black
Kuki one.
belt.
Yeah, which was pretty cool. Ice hockey and a bunch of other things. But so I asked him, I'm like, hey, since you're in there, can we do a couple things? And it's an interesting thing, maybe I don't know if it's Western culture, but in the U.S., my nose was drastically different afterwards, right? And I walked into the office, and if somebody's like, hey, wow, that looks better or something, I'd be like, oh, cool, thanks, man. Yeah, I think so too. It was kind of expensive. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Glad
I'm
you
glad you
complimented it.
noticed. Thank you.
And I walk by so many people, and it's funny because they like recognize, but it's like, oh, I don't want to say anything, or you can't say anything, and it's like that's not being authentic. I don't know. It's a weird like social norm to, like, I guess.
I think people think they're being polite.
I guess. So I walked in, my assistant at the time, fresh off the boat, Irish, and she just, with her accent, she's like, got a bit lopped off, did you? And I was like, thank you. Fuck yeah, I did. Yeah, thanks for acknowledging it. Like, nobody said anything. She's like, oh, no, everybody knows. I'm like, great, awesome. Anyways, it's just kind of a weird thing. It's like when girls get their tits done, like, I feel like that's a little bit different because they're private parts. And why are you looking? And, this, that, the other. If somebody gets a nose job, I think it's okay to say something. But
I kind of think, too, it's like, if it's a man that gets a nose job, you can say anything. I think as a general rule, like, don't talk about females' appearance.
Yeah.
Like, it just
even
out
though
of
they
respect.
spent a lot of money to improve it, you don't know what's going on there. I guess a number of different things, but yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting topic.
We'll have to, we'll have to see if they've done like a Seinfeld on it. I feel like they've got all the
There should be.
like unwritten social rules.
What's the other guy? The other funny Jewish older guy.
Larry David.
He's the best.
Yeah, Curb. He's
Dude,
one of
he's
the creators of
the
Seinfeld.
best.
Yeah,
He should. He should, if he hasn't done an episode about it, because he doesn't give a fuck. He says whatever, and it's hilarious.
I have a friend who met Larry David at a hotel. He was like attending a wedding, and my friend was at the same hotel. And he said that Larry David is just like exactly how he is
I believe that.
in real life.
Yeah, I
And,
believe
you know,
it.
he told him something like, "You're someone I've always wanted to meet," and he's like, "Well, you're going to be disappointed."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
that
he's
makes
just
a lot
like
of sense.
an oddball,
Yeah.
And I love him too. I've always wanted to meet him, and if I met him, I feel like I'd be so excited. And like having him though, like be like a quote unquote like letdown, actually would kind of paradoxically like actually make it better because you're like, this is
Yeah.
what I expected, in the perfect way.
True.
So what about you, man? So you've been kind of just you from a young age, like, and been authentic. You're into, you've got your Arlo's Exotics, you've got your Lambo, you've had all your cool cars. You're a sharpshooter. I just learned you're a black belt in Taekwondo. You were part of the sheriff's department, correct? Or
Yeah.
police department.
Yeah.
And then so what I thought was really interesting about you was here you are, a top producing real estate agent with a real estate team. You're selling a shitload of real estate. You're making really good money, and you decide, And for anyone that like, you can think and say what you want or have whatever, think what you want about real estate. But like real estate is a challenging career to be in. It's time consuming. It's stressful. You really, when you do it at that level, you're busy. You have maybe like employees or team members. You've got clients that depend on you. And if you actually like care, it's like you're invested in it. So, and most people are looking for like a breaker to make it easier. But you went and you're like, I'm going to become a police officer and join the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
So tell me about that, because what like that to me, like I remember seeing it and I'm like, wait, this guy quit real estate? He's like riding around like busting criminals.
Dude, law enforcement. It's like, okay, so I'll back up why I got into it. So I've been a pilot pretty much half my life. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that, but I feel
Yeah.
like at this point you could tell me like you're like G.I. Joe, Navy SEAL, and we're like, oh yeah, it's Arlo, that checks out.
A lot of people, there's not a rumor. There's a large group of people who do not believe that I do real estate. Put it that way.
Really?
Yeah. I've got more stories on that. But when I talk about like being in North Korea and like some of these like different places I've been in the world.
You've been to North Korea?
Twice. I've got it in my passport. So I kind of took like Bush's axis of evil.
By
and
the
just
way,
kind of-
really quickly, this is the kind of guy, so when we're talking about authenticity and pissing people off, but being him is right when COVID was like out and new. This guy posted a shirt of like, what did your shirt say? And you're in the airport. It said like Wuhan Institute of Virology or something.
So right when COVID hit, I got a shirt that said Wuhan, had the Chinese flag. And literally the week I was running an ultra marathon, so I went up to Sacramento. So I had to fly up there. And I did so much training for that ultra, like with like 6,000 feet of climbing and all this stuff. And I'm just so glad that like things didn't get shut down until the week after, because I still got to participate and finish.
Keep in
the
mind,
ultra.
this is very early, so it wasn't like, the COVID
Nobody
we knew
had
with
masks.
the shutdowns. Yeah,
No,
this was the
week
very
before,
beginning.
right before the shutdown. Nobody had masks, so this is
Before
important.
you think he's so insensitive.
Nobody had masks. It is what it is.
It was more of a media sensation at this point than an
But a
actual.
pretty big deal still.
Yeah.
So I bought a shirt that said Wuhan with the Chinese flag, and I thought I was so funny because I actually put on a mask and I put on some of my wife's makeup before she brought me to the airport.
You really committed to the bit.
I've got a video on my phone. I really and you know why I did this? Purely to make myself laugh. That's it. Nobody was with me. I was doing this by myself.
That's the thing, Arlo, is like, people might listen to this and be like, I fucking hate this guy. And then there might be people who think, this guy's hilarious. But the thing I admire about you is love you or hate you. You do this for you. You have an amazing life.
Thank you.
And you have helped me so much, and you've always been open book and like just been supportive of me and my business. Mm-hmm. You're always there. Like if someone that knows you calls, you're always really generous with your time and you're helpful. And so I think we joke in all this, but like underneath all of that, and like you could think it's a crass sense of humor or whatever, but it's like you have a really good heart and you have a servant's heart, and you really. You've got a great family, you've got, great kid, great
I appreciate
wife.
you saying all of that, and you cut me off on this story. And with you saying all those nice things, I'm not going to finish my story now.
Oh, shit.
We could leave it there.
Man, see,
it was actually really funny.
I'm a rookie at this podcast thing. Maybe
you should have let me go another minute and a half.
Don't worry, we'll get into more stuff.
I really that shirt really pissed people off. The timing was horrible, and I went with it, and I was sneezing, and the people at the airport were mad, but they couldn't do anything. And I told people, I was like, I was working in this lab, and they sent me home because I was sick. Guarantee people are walking around telling their children they met patient zero. Guarantee it. The rental car guy, he was so pissed.
Well, you know what else too? Again, that I always admire about you and your sense of humor, that you do it for yourself and for the people who are close to you and get that you mean it as harmless fun, and it's almost satirical about people who get take things so seriously that are outside of their control, and you like to push that boundary and kind of question people's thinking. But what I also admire about that is in real estate, it's I was scared to do this podcast because it's we're so scared to be PC and these things where it's because people won't like us, they won't transact with us, they won't do business with us, and then we're going to be homeless and jobless and all this stuff.
You know what I found though?
What have you found?
So that is a thing, especially in Southern California. You're kind of tiptoeing at a listing appointment, you're afraid to bring up something where they put you on the right or the left or something like that. I found that so many people, as soon as they see you're authentic, they just open up and we're not that different.
Yeah.
I've had clients far left, far right, which I'm not far right, but I've had clients all over, and it's we're actually not that different. And they really appreciate the authenticity.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is I have clients all over the political spectrum, and I have friends all over the political spectrum, and not to expose myself, I think I'm pretty central. I'm not really
I am right-leaning fiscally, but I don't care who marries who.
But I feel yeah, exactly.
That type of stuff.
But that's what I mean is I think most people in California, it's you don't really care what people do, and you want everyone to have their rights and be happy. But I feel everyone here can agree we feel we're taxed pretty hard and our roads need to get fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Drive around PBE or drive pretty much anywhere. The roads are trash. Yeah, don't get me started on that. But
so let me kind of go into this, because it's usually what I ask people is kind of what happened or where was this point? You asked me, is there this point that you really just made a decision or changed? So you didn't. So what has the evolution of Arlo been like? Because the one thing that I did see change, and one thing I think that brought us closer, and you were so generous to give insights and take a lot of time and share with me and help me. I watched you go from kind of what I would call an above average agent as far as success to being a guy who has a solid rental portfolio, multiple streams of income, more and better badass supercars. I've watched you get in better shape, look better and looking younger and all these things. Even as you get older, it seems like your family's never been closer, and you just seem happier, more prosperous, healthier, and financially stronger than ever. What happened? And what do you attribute that to?
It's a good question. When you started the beginning of that question, I feel it wasn't anything recent. It was actually my junior year in high school. I was an exchange student in Germany. And all the other Americans, they were going out drinking because there was no drinking age, and they were out partying all the time. And I found this guy named Misha, who we just kind of saw eye to eye. He was a German guy, though. Name gives it away.
Figures.
Yeah, he wore capri, so you know how feminine they are over there. Capri pants.
Oh, capri pants.
Anyways, we would go to coffee shops. We were like 16. We were going to coffee shops, and we'd just be like slamming coffee, like writing down business ideas. And I just talked to him this morning, so I'm 41 now, if that tells you. He was showing me his $3.5 million yacht that he pulls up to his $6-something million mansion in Ibiza, where he goes on vacation, like crazy successful. We took different paths, did different things, but it was like then when I got like really focused about starting a business, being an entrepreneur, and we started a modeling agency. We had a modeling agency for quite a few years together, and we started it then.
Dude, that's another thing about you that I didn't know. So like, you're born in Germany, you're half German, half American, you moved to America, you grew up in Tennessee, you've been a black belt in Taekwondo, you've been in the sheriff's department, you've lived in Korea, speak Korean, you're a pilot, you're a real estate investor, you run a successful real estate agent, or you have a successful real estate sales team. You've got your group, like helping agents understand shit, which I love, House, on Facebook for anyone who wants to learn about real estate. That's a great group. What else? Like what else about you is, you're a very unique guy. You're kind of like a James Bond type guy. Like what else you got on the resume?
Modeling
agency, sorry.
Yeah, I own the modeling agency. Probably other things that like sound cool in a sound bite like that, I guess. Those are all cool things, but I feel like I just live life in a hurry. And I'm like proud of that. And a lot of people are like, oh, slow down, this, that, the other. But like, you know how like you can open up an app and you can check a bank account and you can see how much money. You can't do that with time.
Yeah. And you don't know how much you have left.
That's the point. You don't know how much you have left. I could drive home today 15 North and get smashed by somebody who's on their phone. Don't know. So it's like, I don't know when that time is. Like this, I believe this is the only life I have, and I want to squeeze like every fucking drop out of it. Like I want to get everything and just, I'm kind of like scattered. Like, oh, I'm going to be a bodybuilder again because I won first in state, Mr. Teen Tennessee. So I've been a bodybuilder. I was in magazines, won 9 titles. I've already done that, but now I'm like, I'm going to do it again. So I'm competing in my first bodybuilding show in 20 years. I'm competing August 24th in Vegas. But like these things come in front of me and I see something like a little bit, like somebody will expose me to something like racing, right? Like car racing. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. I'm going to get a Lamborghini and I'm going to race cars. And I just get all into it.
So wait, so when you find these things that you say you just get all into and you like rush towards, right? So do you just find things that appeal to you? Do you have like an intuition that you should check it out? Like what drives you?
I don't know that I don't really seek them out. I just kind of feel like in different circles, like I'm exposed to it and I see something and I see someone else doing it at a high level or see somebody enjoying it. And then the whole idea of like, oh, you can't do that doesn't really exist. I'm kind of like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out a way to do that. I want to do it. Yeah.
So that kind of like you talked about, you mentioned like I see someone else do that, and it just makes me think of like what you said earlier about being in the right room.
Yeah.
So for you, like I know like part of what kind of I think like when you got in a certain room, like in real estate, is when I saw your career really jump, and I think it was that. So that's one example of being in the right room.
It's been the biggest example in a way.
What are some of the like rooms you've been in, or what? How would you suggest someone finds the room that's right for them?
It's a good question. I feel like I've always been kind of lucky and have fallen into them and just kind of found myself by association.
It's luck if it happens like once or twice, but you continually do this. So like, what do you attribute that luck to?
So when my income and my net worth went up, a lot of doors opened. I get to go do some cool things, shooting, moving targets from a helicopter in Africa. And, you get to meet people. Meet this guy. He's a landowner, 4th generation, blah, 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 blah. And then through this mountain climbing, it's not cheap at all. And it takes a certain type of person who wants to put themselves in that type of danger to like spend so much time, because you can spend.
So what kind of danger is on these expensive mountain hikes or not hikes, excuse me, expeditions?
So do you know what happened to me a couple months ago in Bolivia?
I have an idea, but why don't you tell anyone who's listening?
So I had a number of things happen on that.
So you're in Bolivia. When is this? You said a couple months ago.
Yeah, it was like November.
So November 2023, you go to Bolivia.
Go to Bolivia with a group of buddies. We're going to a 6,000 meter summit, which is about.
How high is 6,000 meters? It's
in like American, it's like 20,000. So that's extremely high. So in an airplane.
So give a comparison to something maybe in America. Is there a mountain that you could compare? Do you know one that's like a 20,000?
So when I did Rainier was 14,000. Rainier.
Okay, so it's bigger than Mount Rainier in Washington.
Substantially. And it's more technical. It's much more challenging. Rainier has some parts depending on the route you go.
So when it's technical, you need to use what, like ice picks and the
Oh,
spike
you're climbing
boots
vertical ice, and
okay.
you've got the boots, and you're on a rope team, and it's challenging. So when you hear about like going a quarter mile or ascending 500 feet, it's like, well, look at the terrain. It's not like climbing, Mount Cowser.
So why, I mean, for some people listening, I'm sure they're really like excited by that and like that sounds awesome.
Well,
and for some people who are
I should tell
like,
you what happened to me.
Well, for some people
There were
like
less
me,
people
like
excited.
why? Because to me, I'm like, yeah, I would never want to do that. Like, so what makes you want to do that?
So it's an interesting thing because you put so that day that I summited, what I'm about to tell you and what happened to me was a 17-hour summit. Now that's from
So
high
that means
base
you're
camp.
hiking
17 hours straight.
Wow.
But that's not, we didn't start there. That's high base. I'm just counting from high base to summit back down.
So to get to high base,
Took us a day.
So you're hiking or climbing for a whole day.
Yeah.
Just to get to a base camp, you spend the night.
Well,
do you spend the night,
we
or?
got there at 7 p.m. and you always leave at midnight. So you leave at midnight because ideally you want to summit at sunrise because 80% of mountaineering accidents happen on the way down, and you want to be coming down during daylight so they can find you or recover the body, to be honest.
Got it.
So I developed high altitude pulmonary edema. So my right lung was bleeding at about 18,000. I could see the summit, and I decided it's called summit fever, and it's for stupid people like me who get this. And I'm like, I've come this far. I've been climbing for like this whole amount of time. I've got all this money invested. I don't want to let people down. I don't want to be a quitter. The summit's right there. And it's not right there, but it looks like it's right there. My right lung's bleeding. I'm spitting up blood, and I keep going up, which is stupid. But I keep going up. I get to the top, and I realize full on I have high altitude pulmonary edema, and my right lung's bleeding. Like it's bad. It was really bad. On the way down, because my heart rate kept going up to like 175, and I was having all these like altitude related issues, I fell into a crevasse. Do you know what a crevasse is?
That's just like a crack in the ground.
Massive break in a glacier, and
It's just a fancy way of saying crevice.
But it's not. It kind of sounds like that, but that is actually how you say it. Anyways,
teasing.
so I had my gear on, and I jumped. I tried to jump across, and I planted my right foot, but my weight above my waist didn't transfer, and I fell into it. And my guide saved my life. Like I fell into it like beyond here.
So are
and
you
then
like
all
on
of
a
sudden-
rope? Or
yeah,
like,
you're always on ropes.
Yeah.
So he caught me. I tried to brace myself with my feet as I was falling in. It was about 8 stories down, from what I could tell. I couldn't see past 8 stories, and so there was that high altitude pulmonary edema. Fell in my first crevasse. On the second one, we had whiteout conditions. So once we got under clouds, I couldn't see to the end of this room. Like I might be able to see to you, but not the wall because of all the snow and everything.
So let me ask you this. So just to recap, so you're climbing up this mountain, you have this lung that's bleeding.
Yeah,
You
I could barely breathe.
say, I have to get to the top because that's just the kind of guy you are.
Because I was so close.
Yeah, and you're so close.
Yeah,
but so far.
When I
but
would
so
breathe,
close.
it was gurgling because there was so much fluid and blood.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And you're hacking up blood, you get to the top. Okay, from the descent to that crevasse, how long did it take you to get down there where you're like hanging over 8 stories?
I'd say 5 hours.
So
or
you're
so.
5 hours going down a mountain, and then you're hanging
Yeah.
with an 8-story minimum fall.
Yes.
On a rope.
To death.
Still gurgling
could
blood.
have fallen to my death. And then all of a sudden it just catches right, and then they do a team. called a team rescue, so they pull me out. The next one, we were further down. This was a couple hours later, and whiteout conditions, and I'm leading. I'm the leader on the rope, and I put my foot down, and it goes right up to my knee. Like it had snowed over, but it was like part of a crevasse. The lasting issues, so those things happened, and those things sucked. I was in the emergency room for a while.
In Bolivia.
What
was that like?
Nicer than here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was actually nicer than here. Got medevaced. They couldn't get my blood oxygen saturation over 90. When they brought me in, it was in the high 70s. I was dying. And they had me, it's kind of a long story, but like they transported me for 2 hours from the base of the mountain to the emergency room. The emergency room is in La Paz, which is the highest city in the world. It's at 12,000. So because even on oxygen in the emergency room, La Paz.
In Bolivia or
Bolivia.
La Paz? Okay, because I always think La Paz, Mexico. Okay.
No. So they couldn't get my blood saturation up to like 97, 98, where it should be, even on like oxygen.
Wow.
So they had to medevac me down.
So what's going through your mind at that point?
I was kind of bummed I didn't get to do the last mountain. Like, we had 3 planned.
That's totally you. It's like, instead of being like, oh, I might die or might this, you're like, oh, man, I don't get to, hike this last mountain.
Yeah, I wanted
like,
to do the last one with my buddies.
Blew up my lung on.
But actually, the lasting issue that I have, you may not know this, but my tibial nerve on my right leg collapsed on that hike. So I thought it was frostbite, but it was actually a collapsed tibial nerve. So the tibial nerve runs down the back of your leg, and it goes into what's called the tarsal tunnel right behind your ankle. And it basically is in control of like all the feeling and sensory in the back half of your foot. I have about a 50% loss of feeling in my right foot right now.
Oh, wow.
Today. Like I can't. I've gotten used to it a little bit. I have like a orthotic in, but I was limping. I could barely walk, and I thought that it was frostbite. But then after being out of the hospital a couple days, I'm like, something's wrong.
So
I'm still dealing with that. So
that's why you said people get offended if you call it a hike, because that's not a hike.
Yeah, right. So that's not a hike. Like, and then the first one I did when I did Rainier, a guy died. And
that you knew?
No, I didn't know him. He was in a group right before us, but we were all
Still
ascending.
frightening.
And yeah, the helicopter came in, the basket goes down, and they recover the body. And that's a different thing because, like, you think about, like, oh, yeah, I know this could happen. But when you see the body of somebody who just died and they were attempting to do what you're doing, then it puts everything in perspective. And it's kind of like, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have all these responsibilities, and that guy just lost his life. Like, is this really worth it? Should I do this? But then you do, because you're not a pussy and you keep going.
It's funny, man. The first time I went skydiving, I was probably like 21 years old, I think, about. And I went with my cousin Christopher, and we would go to skydive San Diego. And right before we go, the instructor, whoever he went with, they jump out the plane. He had a problem with his parachute, so he had to like pull the emergency chute, and he had an issue, so he had to like take a knife and like cut off his, and so his chute goes off into like, wherever, into the marsh, and he comes down, and he's like just down, and you could tell his adrenaline's going. He's like, oh, fucking, I got to like pull the emergency chute, and I'm just like there like, oh, I'm gonna go skydiving my first time.
Yeah, this will be fun. Yeah.
And so like that's not like seeing a dead guy, but I remember that same feeling and like doing it anyway. And so like go in there, and I'm in this plane. Right, and I always love this because it was like, I swear this is like a scene of a movie. I feel like I still want to put it in something one day. And we're with these instructors, and it's like that guy, right? He's like intense, probably looks like he's like ex-special ops or some kind of military. Yep. And another guy is like white guy with just the like dreadlocks tied up, and we're with these guys, and they're like extreme, like they're jumping out of planes for a living. The dude's drinking like a Red Bull on the way up, I'm like, you need more caffeine or adrenaline?
Yeah, you really need your heart rate up more.
And I just go, you hear people talk about like, and anything you do enough, it works. I'm like, hey, so like, does skydiving like lose its luster after a while? Because that's what they say. Like anything that's a job, it loses it. And one guy goes, I don't know, bro. Does sex ever lose its luster? And the other dude immediately goes, yeah, if it's with the same girl.
That's funny.
But I got a new parachute, so I'm good to go. And I was like, dude.
That's a hilarious conversation.
I know, dude. It was just like, it was too like perfect for my first time skydiving. And that really put me at ease after that. But yeah, man, like for me, just like skydiving, jumping out of a plane with someone like, that was scary enough, but like you're summiting mountains and almost dying and
It's so
doing
addictive,
things.
though.
And yeah, and a lot of the goals you set are really like lofty and ambitious and physically challenging or challenging. Like, you know, building a business might not be physically challenging, but like, how do you sustain like focus and discipline to hit these goals? Like, what's your secret, or what can you share with people that might help them if they're listening? Because I mean, I'm curious. I mean, I told you, like, I really selfishly want to collaborate and help, like, facilitate, like, a course on discipline that you run.
That.
I just really want selfishly to, like, become more disciplined, you know, by being in the right room, so to speak. So, like, what do you do, man? Like, how do you, because it seems like it's a little bit of your wiring, but you still have to participate, right? So, like, what's your secret? What are some things you could advise people that might not be built like you?
I always find people who are where I want to be in a certain aspect, and like 5 years from now, and then I just let them tell me what to do. And typically, I have to pay them to tell me because they're coaches or they're people who are doing this at a high level, right?
Yeah.
With my fitness and with the fitness photo shoot I did on my 41st birthday, 41-year-old me on my birthday at that photo shoot would have beat 20-year-old me on a stage, on a bodybuilding stage, legitimately.
Yeah, you were jacked, man. I saw the photos.
I was
You were
shredded.
like shredded ripped.
Veins in my abs, like just crazy ripped. And the thing with that is it's just following a plan that somebody who's a lot smarter than me has put together, and it's literally just doing as I'm told. So in my app right now and in my fridge here, I have meals numbered. They're pre-programmed into my phone. What time of the day, I eat the same thing every single day until it changes, until we tweak my macros for different goals.
And you know what, though, real quick, is like, because I always thought, and I just had this realization sitting here, like I always thought, I was like, man, how does Arlo do this? It's kind of boring. But I realized why. Because
Comfortable being bored.
Well, no, well, maybe, but what I think is it's like the payoff is bigger. There's nothing boring about, you know, being hanging over 8 stories of a crevasse.
That no,
with,
the
but
food
you
I
know
eat's
what?
very boring.
That's what. But I'm saying
Yeah.
the payoff you get because to be able to have the confidence and physical fitness to be able to do that, you've got to like diet and exercise and to like be able to have these pictures to look back on and be in this kind of shape. The payoff seems to be bigger than the sacrifice.
For sure.
Yeah.
It is. And that's like when you're going to summit a mountain and you see it up there. And once you've done it and you know what that feeling's like, mountaineering's a crazy thing. You will fly 20 hours to get to some remote country. Then you're staying in some pretty nasty conditions. Then you'll spend 2-3 days to get to high base camp. Then you summit. And, you know, like Everest and a lot of these peaks, you're there for 10, 20 minutes at the most. And then you go back down right away. So it's kind of like if you think about like all that time for such a short period of like that window. But I want to answer your question directly. Discipline is all, for me, it's about accountability. Like I say things out loud or I put things on social media that I'm going to do like 6 months or a year before. And then to me, it's like this unspoken accountability. It's like, well, that's my word. If I put it out there, I'm going to do this. No, honestly, nobody's paying attention. I don't think anybody follows me on social media close enough.
Doesn't matter though.
It doesn't matter to me because I don't give a shit. But because I put it out there and then I'm like, okay, I just publicly declared I'm climbing this mountain or I'm doing this. My 45th birthday, I'm climbing Mount Vincent. I've told a handful
All right,
of
guys,
people that.
you heard it. He's climbing Mount Vincent.
I'm
So
doing
if he
that on my-
doesn't do it, we're all going to be like, what's up, Arlo?
But I've already told people that. The majority of people don't know where Mount Vincent is, and they don't,
I don't know where it is.
what the
Where is Mount
context.
Vincent?
It's Antarctica, and
Oh,
it's
man.
humans are not meant to survive.
I didn't
in
even know
those
you're allowed to
conditions.
go to Antarctica, or is that South
You
Pole?
hardly are. Same thing. But you hardly are, right? So there are very few ways to get there. I could have gone last week to run a marathon. It was $150,000 for 4 days. So I opted not to do it. But
So, folks, if you have 150 grand to torture yourself and you're looking for thrills, call Arlo.
and if you want to spend more time in Antarctica, you do Mount Vincent, but it's going to cost you.
you might too collapse a lung.
So Mount Vincent, 45th birthday. But yeah, I just kind of publicly declare things. I said I was going to do a 100-mile bike ride in, you know, crazy heat conditions with like 8,000 feet of climbing, and nobody cares. But I put it out there, and then I just do it.
So you know what, though? There's a couple of things that you said that I'd love to like unpack or at least touch on because I found them to be so powerful. Like one is declaring, like the declaration of what you want. And then also for me, like one thing that like I know was a challenge for me is like growing up, I didn't really understand myself. I wasn't in the right rooms. And like we've touched on kind of how important that is, right? To have those people who have been there, done that, and just listen to them and take their direction. So I didn't really like, I didn't put myself in the right rooms for a while. And I think I would make declarations of stuff I didn't really want and I wouldn't follow through. And then I felt like that eroded my self-esteem and self-worth because my word meant nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's like I could fool everyone else or other people into thinking something about me, what I wanted to project. But at night I had to go home and sleep, put my head on my pillow and be alone, knowing that I was full of crap. Right. And so I think that like one thing that I always tell to people, like when I coach them or train agents on my team, is that like you've got to just start like finding out like who you are, what you want, and then declaring it and something that you actually want, right? Not that you like think your parents want or you should do because of society, like what you actually want. And then starting really small and then just being, like it says in the 4 agreements, being impeccable with your word. Like if you say it, you do it. So if you say it, do it. And so what the good thing about this, what I've learned is when I would say stuff and then I was like, shit, I don't want to do that, but I did it. I learned to keep my fucking mouth shut more often, which is a better thing for me because, I like sometimes, I get excited. I run my mouth and I say shit I wish I didn't. But human nature for guys like us, or I can speak for myself. But I think it's so important. I think that's one of the great things about you is, like you said, you say something, then you do it. And for anyone listening, if you feel like you've been where I've been, where you say stuff, and sometimes too, like now, like I feel like it's little stuff for me and I'm trying to be better, is like I want people to be happy, so I'm like, oh hey, like I'm gonna be there, or I'll be there, like if I can I'll make it, rather than just saying I can't make it because I know I'm tired, I know I gotta work, and I know I'm getting burnt out, right?
So you're not there yet? You can't tell people no when you know you're not
No,
going?
I can.
Oh, good. Yeah,
No,
I was going to say that
I
there's so
definitely
much power in being able to
I
tell
definitely
people no.
can, but what I'm saying is I'm still not to the point of exactly where I want to be. Because like I said, like one of the things too is like I said about you, what I admire about you. And like you can take any of the things that Arlo has said and maybe you don't like or this or that, like remove all of that. You have to admire that this is someone who sets goals, shows up for the people that like he loves and people that he doesn't, but is just serves them, right? And not only that is just a great example of how to achieve these things. And like just for me, I can speak for me, is like you've always been so open book and helpful, like about business, life, all that stuff. And so for me, it's not that I'm not there. I'm just not like at your level. So like look at the room I'm in now. Look at, see, this is the right room, right? Yeah. So it's like, and that was one of the things that I appreciate about you is I know from our conversations, like some of the people, and some of these are pretty high profile people, and like I won't name names of people like and name drop and like, but I know you have some friends that are like pretty well known or have done like pretty good things, and like you are in these rooms, so to speak, but you are really cool about taking what you learn in those rooms and coming and sharing stuff with people like me who are trying to get where you're at, and you really are generous with like getting it and passing it down to the next. And I think that's such an important part, is like you're getting that from somewhere, but you're also helping.
It's the only reason I am where I am.
Yeah.
And it's the only reason I'm going to be wherever I'm going to be 2 years from now, is because I intentionally put myself in those rooms where people don't hold their cards close to their chest, and where they have a mindset of abundance, where it's open sharing, and they just want other people to do well. Like, I mean, sharing stuff with you, making you better, making you sell more real estate, making you be more disciplined, or any of these things doesn't take away from me.
I love that you said that, because I think a lot of people, like, we get in, like, our egos tell us, like, hey, if we share this, we're not going to have enough, or there's some scarcity. But
I'd rather wake up on social media and see a win of yours and, wow, I played a hand in that somehow.
Exactly.
How fucking cool is that? Well, and you're going to pass it on, too. Like,
well, also, too, it's like, I think everyone agrees that, like, I mean, we are all one, right? And we're all part of the whole. We're all part of humanity. We are all part of life. So it's like, if humanity is better, if life is better, if the world is better, it's better for everyone, right? Like a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yep.
And so I think, I just think it's really cool, because I know a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people, when you go and you try to be in those rooms and get what you want, a lot of people want money. And one thing that's cool about you, and I'm not saying hopefully people don't just flood your DMs. But one thing I know about you is sometimes people will DM you like kids and be like, hey man, I love your car. And you'll like go over to their house and be like, hey, do you want to like see it? And
So
I just think it's really cool
I
that
get
you
that
do
a
stuff.
lot. Like, I remember being the kid.
Well,
and
dude,
seeing
that
the
Lambo's
guy.
so sick. Next time I'm in Nashville, I'm coming over.
You're too big. You won't fit in it.
I know, dude.
Lamborghinis are
That
meant
shattered.
for guys like-
Dude, I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
shattered my dreams one time. Like I got the opportunity to like ride in a Lambo because I thought
You're too tall.
I love them. I got in it. I couldn't even fit in it. But like, dude, like Billie Jean has one. He's a tall dude. So I think I have faith.
Okay.
I have faith. Or
Yeah.
you know what? Actually, I really love the Urus. That's what I think.
Urus is cool. I'm getting my wife a Urus. They're
Yeah.
awesome.
You're
Yeah,
like,
they're
you're like, oh yeah, Urus is cool. My wife's getting one. Like you're driving a chick car, but yeah, it's all right.
They're awesome. Yeah, it's been cool to share the the cars and stuff with the community. Doing a big thing on May 18th. 100 of us. We're taking 100 supercars and we're giving 100 cancer patients rides on the same day. That's going to be incredible. So getting involved with like charities like that. When parents contact me and they're like, "Oh, it's my son's birthday. It's his dream." Like whenever he sees a Lamborghini, he freaks out, and I'm like, "When's his birthday? Give me your address. I'll take him out. Take him like get a donut."
And
or
I
something.
saw those videos of you doing that. I thought that
Yeah.
was so cool. And you could see the kid was so happy.
Oh, it plants seeds. Those kids
Yeah.
will remember that their whole life.
For sure.
And for me, it's like I get to like share something cool that I never thought I'd have
Yeah.
with somebody who like looks up to it. That's kind of cool.
It's
like,
very cool.
What a great position to be in.
Yeah. And that's a great perspective to have.
It's just a thing.
Yeah.
If like I've brought it to car shows and I had a guy like break something on the handle, like he was looking at it and he felt so bad, and I'm just like, hey man, it is what it is. It's a car. Like shit happens. Because I know by me bringing my cars out and doing the things I do, it might get scratched, it might get this, it might get that, but what am I going to do? Just let it sit in the garage, not put any miles on it, and then one day hope to sell it to somebody? Like, no.
You know, that's another thing that I just kind of like was thinking of as you were saying that is one thing I've noticed about you is since I've known you, you always have really cool toys, like in cars and
do.
guns and motorcycles and all this kind of stuff. But like you're the kid that shares their toys,
Which
which
I never thought I'd have them.
yeah, which I think is so cool.
Like, I was not the kid growing up where people would have thought he's going to be in this position.
dude, did you see-
And now I am, so I'm like, cool.
You know what though? It's funny that you say that. It's like, did you see Daniel Beer's Facebook post today?
Yeah, I
And
was
it's like-
that kid.
Yeah, and
I
that's
was
the
a
thing is,
kid,
I was
same
that
thing.
I was
Yeah.
that kid too. I wasn't as much that kid. Maybe I should have behaved worse, and I'd be more successful. I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate, and he's being very authentic there in who he
Yeah, I
is.
love
I've
Dan.
known that-
Dan's another great example of someone who's just themselves, and like,
Always.
dude, I got nothing but
Yeah.
love and admiration for that dude. He's
Same.
He's
Let
awesome.
me tell you about Dan since it came up. I wasn't going to, put any names out or anything, but on my trip, when I was in the emergency room in Bolivia.
Was he there with you?
He stayed. He came. He was with me. He came to the emergency room and he stayed that night with me, my first night there. And he called when I got taken there. He called me. He was like, "Where are you?" And I told him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm coming." And I was like, "No, dude, I'm fine. I'm fine." I wasn't fine, but I'm telling him like, there's no reason for you to be here. And he's just like, okay. And he hung up. And the next thing I know, he's like, I'm downstairs. I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that. He stayed with me all night. He's an awesome dude for many reasons. That's like one example out of 100. But we talked about Bolivia.
But yeah, it's funny because it's like you, him, and anyone else listening. Dan Beer's a super successful real estate guy and coach and all these other different things.
Just a good human though. Just a good dude.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
just people listening. Some people in the real estate community are like, "Yeah, I know who that is," but anyone else listening, not. But like him, he posted something on Facebook today, basically saying that like he got in a bunch of trouble in school, and everyone said all these things like, "You're not going to amount to shit," in so many words. Arlo's saying the same thing, and I had the same thing. What is it about like a lot of us who in school look like everyone says we're going to do bad, and all of us, like. I feel like I do pretty good, but then I go to you and I'm like, damn, like I'm kind of slacking. And then you might, I don't know how you feel, but then you look at like someone like Dan, you're like, damn, like this guy's
I'm
really
constantly.
killing it too.
So I went. What day's today? I don't even know. Today's like Monday. Is today Monday?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Whatever. A couple days ago, I was in Hollywood with Dan, Brian, and a handful of other people. And Brian Daney was one of the speakers. Obviously, Dan was a speaker. And afterwards, Brian and I are walking, and he's like, "Hey, so." How was it? How did it go? What do you think about the content? And I looked at him and I was like, man, I feel like such a piece of shit.
Why?
And he kind of looked at me puzzled too. And he's like, huh? And I said, that's how I know that this was a good seminar.
Oh, I
If
know exactly I know that feeling.
You know what I mean? When you
I
go
know
to a
exactly
good
what you
seminar
mean.
and you walk out and you're just like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm so lazy. I'm not like achieving anything.
Dude,
you
I
know
know.
you're in the right room. You know you were just like exposed to something that you know you should be doing, that you could be doing, but you should do it on a higher level. And you just feel bad. You're like, man, I owe more to my family, to
Yeah,
myself,
man.
to like the people that work for me.
My friend Molly Haynes, shout out, I love her. She's like my sister. She invited me to this like small retreat with Spring Benson, who's like another badass real estate businesswoman in Utah, kind of like Dan level.
Yeah.
And I was not in like the best place, like in my life at that point, but I just was like, holy shit, this is a whole different level. Like this conversation, and I've had conversations with Dan too, where like, cause he's really generous too and really cool, where it's like, I've never even thought about that. Like, and this is like, so it's really, I mean, I'm so glad that you came today, because it's like, how you're describing how you felt after that seminar, like I'm kind of feeling now, but it's like, but I love that feeling.
That's a good
I
thing.
love feeling
But
like a piece of shit, because I'm like, to me, that's so motivating.
Well, it's what do you do
like,
with it, right? Do you feel like a piece of shit and do you put your head down and say, woe is me? Or do you feel like a piece of shit, take 10 pages of notes, call your team immediately, meet them at 9 o'clock the next morning, and sketch out what you're going to implement? So what I've noticed is people I meet with, because like you said, I'm generous with my time, and I can predict when I meet with somebody and I share something with them, the speed at which they implement will tell me how successful that person's going to be. Just moving forward, like a general idea. So you go to a seminar, you hear some good things, you take some notes, you go home, you're comfortable with your wife, girlfriend, family, whatever, and then Monday comes around, the emails come in, and then eventually you want to like implement one or two things and you never do it. Right? But the people who are like on the plane, like emailing their team, like from the bathroom. So House Page, I went down, you mentioned earlier.
So that's Arlo's private face group thing, and House is like the German HAUS,
which stands for
helping agents understand shit. If you are a real estate agent and you want to understand stuff better, but also what I love about House is this isn't like, and I'm not going to specifically name real estate pages, but it's not like some of these other ones where it's a bunch of bullshit. This is just straight strategies. And some of them are really high level. Some of them are, it's not just like, it's not, hey, what CRM do you use? It's like, hey, this is how I win multiple offers. And some of those, it's interesting. I'll go toe to toe with like anybody when it comes to like going in multiple offers. Like I'm really good with it, and I'm very secure and know what I'm doing and feel really confident with my real estate abilities. Like I might not run as big of a business as some of these people, but I do mostly referral business, and I know like my actual, like the job part of the job, like the negotiation, the tactics, the strategy, I think is as good as any of the top dogs. What I will say though is even in house, you covered some stuff that even I was like, oh, I've never thought about that. That was like, even I've taken stuff from there and learned stuff and like been like, wow, that's actually a really cool thing. And like, yeah, you get like pretty high level, but also like you cover like kind of more introductory and middle and everything in between.
But here's why. So the whole tagline for that page is teaching people what I know now that I would have known my first 5 years in real estate. And the implementation piece about that was I went to a seminar with Dan in Houston, maybe Dallas, doesn't matter, Texas somewhere. And the idea was presented right then and there to start a page where you openly, with no agenda, you openly share things that you have successes with in real estate. And then you invite agents in, create a community. I literally went to the bathroom and I stood there after I used the bathroom, before I walked in, as they were talking about it, and I went on Facebook, created that page. Within like a week or two, I had like 200 people on there, and it kept growing organically from that.
Well, it's a great group, and I think the one word, maybe discipline was initially like the one word I thought when I thought about you, and definitely authentic, but I think the one word after talking to you more that I think that describes you best is consistent.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. Is because it's like whether it's who you are and who you have been, being like a kid into cars, being just you, being disciplined, wanting to do your stuff, you are consistent. Like your diet, everything you do is consistent with who you are. It's consistent with your goals. It's consistent because you don't miss. Like, one thing that I'm wondering is, like, how do you have the energy to do all this stuff? Like, I mean, your diet's really clean and you do exercise, but, like, do you feel like you have more energy than other people? Or do you think it's just because your diet, exercise, and drive is
No,
there?
the diet, honestly, sometimes like the diet works against me big times. Like, so it's hard to push through. Like right now, I'm only on
You mean when you're, like, cutting and stuff?
Yeah, even now I'm doing like a little mini cut just because I got a little too fluffy in my off season.
Yeah, I get you.
And right now I'm only eating 200 grams of carbs a day, which like isn't terrible.
My whole life's been an off season.
But I eat 100 before my workout, so I get up at 4:30. I eat 100 grams of carbs, eat my protein, work out, and I have another 100 grams of carb and protein after I work out. So by like 7:30, 8 o'clock, I've had all my carbs for the entire day.
So for those of us who don't do macros, micros, and all that kind of like
Well, it's
hardcore
energy
stuff,
related is where I'm going with
what
that.
is, and I'm teasing. Obviously, I don't know like the lingo. What are you actually eating? What does that actually look like? Is that like
All my meals are so because I've been traveling for 2 weeks. My checked luggage was 60 meals.
so? But
all
what's
numbered.
in your meal?
So typically egg whites. I have egg whites. I have oats in the morning when I'm allowed to have carbs. Put a little bit of coconut, like a coconut butter, coconut paste in there
Yeah.
to get some fat. After I have beef, I have rice, a lot of rice when I'm able to
Yeah.
have carbs. Lots of meats, salmon, a lot of meat
So
throughout
kind
the
of
day.
what you would expect.
Yeah, it's all super
Yeah.
clean. It's really high quality food. It is expensive, but it's what you're putting in your body, so it's a worthwhile investment. But yeah, I was just saying, I came here with those meals, and I eat the same thing every single day, and it's just like being consistent or being like having a boring routine really helps move the needle in a lot
Yeah.
of different ways in your life, whether it be exercise, business. Like in our industry, calling expireds, is it fun? I don't know.
I hate calling expireds.
Well, people
Actually, I don't.
The thing is, people generally hate calling people they don't know, trying to solicit business or trying to give them a value proposition. But I'm really comfortable with it. Last week, I signed $3.2 million of listings just by calling expireds. People have this misconception, oh no, it's not the market for it. Bullshit. Right now it's the low-hanging fruit, because you had the market like fourth quarter last year and you have all
Yeah.
these people blaming their agents. We have better market conditions now. So when you can get in front of those people, determine that their need to sell still exists, determine that they're blaming the agent and it wasn't because of some crazy price, you can get that listing. That's now business. And
You hear that, agents? Get off your asses, pick up the phone.
But it's boring
Call those
consistency. Do you
expired.
think that's fun? Do you think it's fun for me to sit there and say, okay, for 2 hours, I do a 50-minute block, 10-minute break, 50-minute block of having people hang up on me, having people call me a piece of shit, all this stuff. It's boring consistency, and I just don't care.
But you know what is fun, ladies and gentlemen? Driving Lamborghinis.
Yes, yeah. I did a lot of, it's like.
So let me ask you this. So because you're good at setting goals, and one thing that I felt compelled to share with you is I had a dream a little while ago where in the last thing I remember before I woke up and had to write it down, it was the words identify and implement. And it's just
100%,
so
yeah.
I realized it's identify these things and implement the solution, or
Speed
identify
at which
those
you
things.
implement. That's the biggest,
That's so some of the key takeaways that I'm taking from this conversation with you is the speed that you implement stuff. Once you identify
Critical.
it, implement it right away. Don't wait till you get home. Don't
You'll half-ass it. You have
go
to do it
right out of that seminar,
Yeah.
on the plane home, in the hotel, whatever. Email your team, talk to your people, or do it yourself. Implement it. So identify and implement quickly. Don't wait.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is being consistent, being disciplined, because the payoff is better.
Mm-hmm.
Declaring what you want, making it voice or public, and making sure that you are consistently, daily, keeping your word. So when you keep your word on little things, it turns into a big thing. Your big things, you can keep your word. And then another thing that I think I've kind of got from this is do it for yourself, right? Make yourself laugh, right? Make sure you're having fun, because it's you might have the most boring, as you call it, food routine, but you have fun in your little Wuhan shirt and all these things you do, and you I remember for example of Arlo and I's social media banter and shit is I posted this it's probably a couple years in the business,
Is
and I
it the
bought my
satchel?
yes, yeah, you know it's the satchel, bro.
I had to call out the
Can't go-
satchel.
So I got like a nice like laptop bag, and I'm like taking a real estate photo, where I'm like got my bag,
A
and I'm
staged photo of a lifestyle photo of you
Lifestyle
gazing
photo.
gazing into the sunset with your new
into-
satchel.
Pretty much, that's a perfect description of it. But Arlo calls it out.
I call that shit out immediately.
He called it out immediately about
Out of
the
love,
satchel.
though, out of love.
But it was like that's the kind of stuff we like banter, and then I'll leave comments on his stuff, and it's like you've always had fun like that, and I mean like you were the one guy, and what's funny too is like you were the guy when we were at like Keller Williams family reunion in Vegas like many years ago, where like you've got the big giant like cocktail cup with a straw, and everyone's kind of like not ready to
That
get
was
the
like-
drink yet, and you're like, yeah,
Well, it was
dude,
9
let's have
o'clock.
it.
It was whatever the big thing
Yeah.
right. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I had so much fun on that.
And you're not like a big drinker either.
no,
but I like that you were just
I
like
hardly
bold
ever
enough to
drink
get like
now.
that giant stupid cocktail.
because it's the dumbest thing possible.
I know,
It's
but
so
that's like
stupid.
it's just so fun to have you around.
I appreciate you. Put
Yeah.
me in a room full of real estate agents that think they're saving lives, like curing cancer and like delivering babies, and then I walk in. I'm gonna have some fun with those
Yeah.
types of people because those people it's easy, right? It's the
Yeah.
low hanging fruit of like amusing myself.
Well, and the thing too though is like one thing I've noticed because I've you've shared some reviews and different things and kind of stories. We've had a lot of time, and we don't have as much time here to like talk about stuff. Is like you've built a really loyal client base, and you really do go to bat for your clients, and you really actually give a shit about them. You're like me, and that's one thing is like there are a lot of those people. They think they're so important or they're so this so that. Like it's kind of a narcissistic
oh, big time! It is totally
egomaniac
Yeah.
industry, right? And I mean that with all due respect, and like I love my community,
No,
right?
fuck those people.
Well, it's funny.
We're not saving lives. We're not rescuing
No,
babies
we're
out of
not. I
burning
think
houses.
what we do
We're real
though
estate
is
agents.
important.
Yeah, it
but,
is.
But in perspective,
It
right?
is.
It's like we're not, like you said, we're not running and burning houses and doing
what we're
stuff.
doing can make a massive change in people's income in their lives because the majority of people's net worth is tied up in the equity of their home. So it is
Yeah.
massively important. I'm not discounting that at all. But when you I think we could all
But you
say,
shouldn't take yourself too seriously.
well, the thing is, if what we're doing is so important, then wouldn't it make more sense to cooperate with other people in your field instead of putting them down and being arrogant and thinking you're better and this, that, the other because you had a big sale or two?
Well, you just said fuck them, so.
Yeah, fuck
I'm
them.
I'm fucking
get off your
around.
high horse. Seriously,
Yeah.
but hey, let's cooperate. Let's work together. Let's stop
I'm
thinking
with
that
you,
we're
man.
like all arrogant and all this
Well,
stuff. Like
That's
it's just
one-
stupid.
Yeah, that's one reason why I've always really liked you, and like, and a lot of the people, like all the people we've mentioned, are all really cool, and there is so many great people. Like
There are a
you know,
ton. You
in
just
our
gotta find
industry.
them.
Yeah, and it's just kind of oversaturated. It's like someone, I had heard of the book Blue Ocean Strategy, and someone said real estate's red ocean. I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, it's the opposite of blue ocean. There's sharks and there's blood in the water. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is like that.
It is. Yeah.
But I think like I just really, really admire that you are bold and you don't care and you have this success that really like you can't argue with. So if anyone there is like thinking like, oh, this guy's like an asshole or he's doing this, like it's not keeping him up at night. He's not losing sleep. He's not losing money. And really, if anything, he's building a bigger, better, and more loyal like group of clients, customers, followers, and just a network. Because I think you get past all the little things and really like, and I think that's a problem now is we want to like look at the Instagram, like the really just like the little highlight reel, or we want to like look at someone like what's their political preference or what's this, what's that, rather than get to know them and look at the nuance and see that we're all really like humans doing the best with what we got. But dude, thank you for allowing me to be in the right room with you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Just before we get going, a couple last questions.
Okay.
What do you think, like, what's your best advice or, like, last thought, like, for someone, like, what's the best way to, like, find who you are and then, like, live authentically? Like, what would you say to someone who's maybe struggling with that?
So that's a tough question. I thought you were going to ask me another one that would have been way easier. That's a tough thing because I think it's so, like, dependent to each person, but environment has so much to do with that. So this is a lot harder than what I'm about to say. Like, you can't just do this. But if you have an opportunity to live abroad and to go abroad by yourself, even for a short period of time, you really discover a lot about what's important to you. It puts a lot of things into perspective. If you can disconnect, like if you can go somewhere and be off social media and be off all of that, like really disconnect with like what's holding you down here, because it probably is holding you down, that's probably the quickest way. Because if you're in your environment with all the same social cues and all the other things, if you're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to be like that, you're probably not going to find that.
Yeah, so getting a pattern interrupt, going somewhere totally different.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so right, because it just goes back. I mean, I think the theme of today is the right room, right? And it's like, I know for me, when I spent all that time, like, in Mexico, like for me, that was that first time that I got that pattern interrupt. I got to be someone else and who I wanted to be, and I wasn't held to all those like social contracts of like, oh, you're Michael Sutton, this is how you are, this is how you are. I get to go and be like a new guy in a different country.
Nobody knows you. There's
Nobody
nothing
knows
tied
me.
to you. You get to just...
And I was fascinating to them. Here, I felt like I was run-of-the-mill and a loser at the time, because I was just kind of like getting my shit back together. But like there, I was treated like I was fascinating and interesting because I was foreign, right? And so I love that idea. If you do have the opportunity to go abroad, it will enrich your life.
So I know that's like not that easy, right? Like
no,
depending on where you are in your life.
But you know what is easier is like finding a community, right? And like now with social media, so if you're doing real estate and you're trying to be a better real estate agent, you can go to a group like House, Haus, helping agents understand shit. And like at least you get in the right room, right? You can listen to podcasts, and you can hire a coach, join a mastermind, or just go to networking stuff. Like you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, you got to find your tribe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So important.
Yep.
So important. So like, okay, so that's good. And what about like, what do you see next? What's next for Arlo? I know St. Vincent for 45, but what's next?
The immediate goal is to compete and win. I want to win multiple classes. I don't want to just win one. I want to win multiple classes. August 24th in Las Vegas, the Sin City Showdown. My wife will be competing for the first time. I'll be competing for the first time in over 20 years, and my plan is to win first place.
I love that. I'll root for you from afar.
Thanks.
So, in conclusion, I mean, what would you like to share with anyone who's listening?
Dream big. I know that's like so cliche, but like really like find things that scare you and then commit to them and do them. The way that you grow in life, like by doing that, the people you'll meet on that journey, once you see like doing these things that to other people sound so crazy aren't actually that crazy. Like, yeah, they're tough, and yeah, I've got some medical issues. I can't feel half of my right foot because of certain things, but like all of that, it leads to bigger things. So you just can't be afraid. Like you can't be afraid. Don't think small. Just put goals down. What's the worst that's going to happen?
You're going to be exactly where you are today.
Be pretty bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to be there a year from now. I don't want to be in the same place. Yeah, it'd be awful. So really just like find people that inspire you. Find people like, because like I said, when I say like, oh, you've done this, you've done that, some of the people that I hang out with, like the shit they do, it's crazy. One of my buddies just ran 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. It's called the 7X Project. It's a medical, like, it's just crazy that he could even do that. There were a group of guys. 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days.
It's wild. I've never even done one marathon, and I think I've only been to 2 continents.
So it's kind of like, okay, it's all perspective, right? And it's all like, okay, that's cool, you've done this. But then there are other people doing like much crazier stuff. Surround yourself by those people and just, you know, that's what you choose to do.
Once again, be in the right room. Find that, like I think you said to me one time, you said, if you wanted to go and, you know, Arlo, the one criticism I will give you on your sales, if I may,
Please
is you need to know your audience. Because when you were giving me the metaphor, the kind of the thing about the Sherpa and the expedition, like if you want to get to the summit, you need the Sherpa to get you there.
You're not a mountaineer.
I'm not a mountaineer, man. You should have said like, you know, if you want to like win the tennis match, I'm teasing, but
I know nothing
no,
about
but
tennis,
you gave me great advice one time. You said like, look, if you want to get to the mountain, whatever summit you want to get to, like you would do better finding a Sherpa or someone who's been there to guide you up there, right?
Yeah, literally walk in their tracks.
And it's so
said,
simple and it sounds like that, but it's like to actually go out and do that and seek that and commit to it. And I think like one of the things too that I think is the start for people maybe who aren't just like born with your kind of like way of being. And I know for me it was like, but you still follow, right? You said, I just find someone who's been there, done that, and I just listen to them and take their advice.
That's what I do. My trainer, all of that.
Yeah, for me, that was a big part too, is like not only like admitting like my way isn't working for me, and then like, but trying somebody else's way, going to
Don't
someone.
reinvent the wheel.
Dude, my dad used to say that to me when I was a kid, and I hated it, but it's so true. It's so true. It's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like, it's been invented. You can like make it better, but like just and enhance it, but
and even
don't
why?
reinvent
Like
it.
if other people are succeeding at a very high level and the roadmap is there, it's ego that causes you to deviate and put your own stamp on it. That's all it is. Like, okay, do I want to get there? What does that mean? $1 million net worth, $10 million net worth, climbing this mountain, having six-pack abs? What does it mean? Okay, well, here's the path, and it's a direct path, and it's easy, and you're just going to do it by steps. If you do anything besides taking those steps, that's just ego. Just fucking like, does this really matter? Then just do this. Don't do this.
So Arlo, when can we collab on the consistency and discipline project?
Tell me. I always like doing things with you. This has been fun. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, so tell me.
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for listening. Arlo Nugent with Blue Chip Realty, Instagram, Arlo's Exotics for his car page. Mm-hmm. Arlo, where else can the people find you, and what do you do? How can they reach you? How can people do business with you? What do you want to? Here's your chance to promote yourself.
Yeah, so specifically Nashville, I have an office that's in Nashville that's open, so I'm not going to promote myself here in San Diego where you're crushing it. Nashville is, you just reach out to me at Arlo Nugent is an easy way to get me on Instagram. And then at Arlo's Exotics if you want to see the cart collection. Facebook, obviously my name.
Arlo Nugent, thanks for coming. All of you at home, in your car, wherever you are, thank you so much for listening. It's a Real Original podcast. Remember, there's nothing more real or original than you being your authentic self. So keep it real, keep it original, and thanks for listening.